Hello all. Tonight, it's time for some real talk about a dangerous minority. Now, I usually don't have much of a problem with political correctness. I think it's a sort of etiquette that helps us all get along and get along better. But sometimes you've just got to be honest. In recent months, the news out of Europe has convinced me that it's time to put away political correctness, at least for one video, and be honest about a dangerous minority that threatens us all. Western civilization may depend upon us being honest about this threat. So, tonight, I'm gonna do it. Europeans are fucking scary. Seriously, don't let the last 70 years of history fool you. Europe can be a savage place, full of crazy, violent people. Now, I'm no racist. Some of my best friends are Europeans. I love European music, and I think European contributions to culture have been tremendously important and should be valued and respected. But Europeans are trouble. I know pointing this kind of thing out might make you uncomfortable. Heck, it makes me kind of uncomfortable, but we've just got to look at the data. There were probably hundreds of wars in the 20th century, but how many of these wars killed more than 10 million people? Really, just 2. And both of those were started and fought by Europeans. If you go further back in European history, things don't really get any better. For 2,000 years, all Europeans did was sort of rip at each other. Groups of roving thugs would take over one part of Europe or another part of Europe, and then they'd rip each other to shreds, just trampling, murdering anybody that got in their way. Europe was a tremendously dangerous place. And then, with the Industrial Revolution, these European thugs went out and took over the world. Europeans are dangerous. It's a simple fact. But for the past 70 years, something has happened. Europeans have learned how to actually be civilized. There hasn't been a major war in Europe since World War II, and European imperialism is essentially done. It's basically over with. Now, between World War II and the end of the Cold War, this had a lot to do with the Americans and the Russians. The United States and the USSR pretty much kept Europe in check. But since then, they've also managed to keep it together. And this comes down to one tremendously valuable institution, the European Union, or the EU for short. This organization is really kind of a mess. It's a overly bureaucratic, over-regulated clusterfuck, for lack of a better word. But it's essential. Because of the way that the EU works, all of the post-Soviet economies didn't become crazy nationalist breakup states like Yugoslavia. They became something kind of like modern democracies. Through free markets and cooperation, the European continent has been tamed to a degree. That's an incredible gift not just for Europe, but for everyone else in the world. Europeans are dangerous. This is something we have to remember. On the European continent, and in the United Kingdom most of all. It's easy to look at the past 70 years of economic development, economic miracles, and peace and prosperity, and just assume that that's what Europeans are. We saw in the 90s in Yugoslavia how quickly that mask can slip. We're already beginning to see the mask slip in places like Hungary and Poland. Sure, the constituencies for hyper-nationalist views are really quite small at this point. There's probably no more than 5% of Hungarians or Polish people believe that they deserve chunks of other countries in Europe. But in 1985 in Yugoslavia, there probably weren't that many people who believed in these things either. It won't take much for Europe to fall apart. For the past 25 years, and some years before that, it's hard to measure exactly, the European Union has acted to keep that from happening. In June of this year, the United Kingdom will be voting on its membership of the European Union. The United Kingdom is one of the largest, one of the most powerful, and certainly one of the richest countries in the EU. At this point, the polls seem to be pretty even. It's 50-50 whether or not the UK will actually exit. People have taken to calling the concept Brexit. I think Brexit is insane. To date, most of the conversations have been about things like immigration or the economy. Could the UK do better without the EU? I tend to think the answer for that is a resounding no, but I'll let other, much more educated types handle that. What I think hasn't been discussed enough yet is the true purpose of the EU. The European Union is there to keep Europeans in check. I'm pretty confident that the EU is really the only thing keeping the continent from slipping back into the savagery it loves so much. As I said, the EU is a mess. It absolutely needs to be reformed. The past 5 or 6 years have been pretty rough. There's been economic collapse. The United States, with its adventures in Syria, hasn't really been helping much. A lot needs to be done in the EU. That becomes much, much harder without the UK contributing to solutions to these problems. A lot of people seem to think that, oh, the EU's just more naturally going to be happy as a continent, it'll be fine. I think that's a fantasy. If Britain leaves, it's quite likely that there'll be a cascade of other countries leaving the EU. Even if they don't leave, then the EU will be pretty transparently a German-led union. And I think as nationalism becomes more and more of a thing in Europe, people are going to be less and less likely to put up with that. If you've got the UK to counterbalance Germany and France, then the EU may survive. If Britain leaves, that may be the whole show. And the consequences will be dire. Europeans are a minority on this planet of ours. They've contributed a lot of great things, but they've also contributed to the most savage wars of the last 200 years. Europeans are responsible for the deaths of millions, actually hundreds of millions. This is a legacy we can't be politically correct about. This is a legacy we have to look at straight on. One of the greatest things that the Europeans have ever done is develop a framework in which they can work together and not kill each other and kill everybody else. The idea that people in the United Kingdom are now thinking of discarding this just strikes me as mind-blowing. It's also crazy to me that nobody's talking about the real reason that the EU exists. In the 21st century, we're not just talking about keeping Europeans from killing each other. We're talking about the continuing viability of the human race on this planet. The European Union is our best guard against real war on the European continent and real war in the wider world. Giving that up would be an insane mistake. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. And if you'd like to help me make more videos like this one, please click on the Patreon link here to find out how. Thanks.